They came at dusk, when the sun bled its last over the dunes, and the air smelled of smoke and iron. The town was half asleep, yet the square was alive with the slow cruelty of barter. Chains clinked against the wooden stage, and the world seemed to shrink to that sound alone. Two women sat side by side, hands bound, dust coating their knees. The younger of the two, Iana, kept her chin high though her eyes carried the exhaustion of too many yesterdays. Beside her, Naeli trembled but tried to hide it behind a quiet hum, a fragment of a tribal lullaby that no one in this place would understand. They had walked 3 days through heat and heartbreak to reach this forgotten corner of the frontier. Their captors had promised mercy, then sold them to a trader who saw worth only in bodies. No tears left now, just waiting. Iana counted the heartbeats between each gust of wind, wondering if dawn would ever mean light again. The wooden sign above them creaked in the breeze, only $1.5. She thought of how small a price could erase a life. From across the square, laughter drifted, the kind that tried to bury guilt under whiskey. Men leaned against rails, their boots tapping time to nothing. Iana's gaze found one figure apart from the noise. A cowboy stood by the hitching post, tall, sunburned, his stance that of a man both proud and weary. Elias Kane. He didn't look like the others. His hands rested easy on his belt, not on his gun. His eyes, gray as river stones, held something else, the weight of memory. He hadn't meant to stop in this town. He told himself he was only passing through, a drifter collecting miles instead of forgiveness. But when he saw the women on that platform, the air shifted. He thought of his late wife, her voice soft with the same defiance, her kindness burned into his conscience like a brand. He turned away. He'd sworn off saving anyone. The West had taken too much from him already. The trader shouted, listing the women's skills, with a grin that stung. They can cook, sew, clean, fine workers, worth every cent. His words scraped the silence like a dull knife. Iana lifted her head. Her voice, raw from thirst, cut through the laughter. "They'll sell us at dawn," she said, not to beg, but to breathe truth into the dust. "But we can cook. We can sew. We can clean. We'll do whatever you need." No one answered. Her words hung there, trembling like a rope between life and surrender. Elias felt them strike something hollow inside him. The crowd turned away, uncomfortable with courage in a language they didn't speak. Iana's eyes found the cowboy again, just long enough for him to see the quiet storm within them. Then she lowered her gaze, ashamed of hope. Old Marta, the innkeeper, stood in her doorway wiping her hands on her apron. She had seen many things bought and sold in this town. Land, cattle, even love, but never two women who still looked at the sky as if it owed them mercy. She whispered to herself, "Not again," and turned away, pretending her hands weren't shaking. Elias walked closer, boots heavy in the dirt. The sheriff, a thick man with eyes like dried mud, noticed. "You thinking of bidding, Kane?" he mocked. "Didn't take you for a man with taste for trouble." The crowd chuckled, but Elias didn't rise. He just studied the sisters, the way their wrists bled under rusted iron. Something cracked inside him, small but deep. He remembered the sound of his wife's last breath, the promise he'd broken to protect her. Every man carried ghosts, some wore them like badges, others like chains. He turned away again, hands clenched, because stepping forward meant becoming the man he'd tried so hard to bury. Night crept in. The crowd thinned, the trader packed his ledger, and the sisters were left in the cold quiet. Iana leaned her head against Naeli's shoulder. "It's just till dawn," she whispered, though she didn't believe it. Naeli murmured the old song again, her voice faint as smoke. Elias stood at the edge of the street, half in shadow. The moon caught the metal of the chains, and for a breath, he saw them not as strangers, but as mirrors of every soul the West had swallowed. His jaw tightened. He started toward them, then stopped. The sheriff's laughter followed him into the dark. He saddled his horse and rode out of town without a word. The wind lifted behind him, scattering dust like ash. Back on the platform, Iana watched the horizon where he vanished, her eyes hollow but still alive. She whispered, more to herself than anyone, maybe some souls ain't meant to save others. The stars rose, cold and clear. Somewhere in the distance, thunder rolled, soft, uncertain, like a heart deciding whether to return. The sisters closed their eyes, and the night held its breath, waiting for morning to break something open. The morning cracked open with the sound of a gunshot. It wasn't aimed at anyone, just the trader's way of waking the town for business. The echo rolled through the stillness, scattering a flock of crows and stirring fear like dust in the sisters' chests. Ayana's wrists ached where the iron bit into her skin. Naeli's lips moved in silent prayer, though the gods of this place had long forgotten their names. The sun rose cold and pale, painting the platform in colorless light. By now, half the town had gathered. The sheriff leaned against the post, chewing on a straw, his smirk lazy and cruel. The trader counted coins with greedy rhythm. Men called out numbers like it was a game. Ayana tried not to listen. Each shout stripped a layer from her spirit, until she felt almost transparent. She thought of rivers back home, of the way sunlight used to play on water, and wondered if freedom had a sound, or if silence was all it left behind. Then, through the noise, a low rumble. Hooves. Slow at first, then rising, steady, certain. The crowd turned as the rider emerged from the heat haze, black horse, dust trailing like a storm behind him. Elias Cain. His eyes were darker now, shadows under stone. He dismounted without a word. The sheriff's smirk faltered. Elias tossed a worn leather pouch onto the table. The coins spilled, dull and heavy. "I'm buying them," he said, voice even as the desert wind. The trader blinked, then laughed. "You. That's near everything you own." "Maybe," Elias said, "but I reckon their lives are worth more than mine." A hush spread like fire. The sheriff stepped forward, spitting into the dust. "You got no right to interfere. These women belong to the sale." Elias met his stare. "No one belongs to anything." His hand brushed the gun at his hip, slow, deliberate. The air thickened. The sheriff's eyes flicked toward his deputies, but no one moved. Even the trader swallowed hard. Ayana watched from the platform, breath caught between disbelief and something dangerous, hope. Naeli gripped her hand, whispering, "He came back." The trader hesitated, then muttered, "Fine. Take him and go before this gets ugly." But ugliness was already here. The sheriff drew his pistol with a bark of laughter. "You don't walk away from this, Cain." The shot came first from Elias. One clean strike to the man's shoulder, spinning him to the dirt. The crowd scattered in a panic of boots and screams. The sisters ducked as the chains clattered to the wood. Elias cut through them with his knife, fast as breath. "Can you run?" he asked. Ayana nodded, though her legs trembled. Naeli stumbled, but Elias caught her arm, steadying her. Together, they fled the square, past Marta's porch where the old woman shouted something. Maybe a blessing, maybe a warning. Behind them, the sheriff's voice roared curses, but no more bullets followed. They rode hard beyond the town's edge, through open desert where wind whipped their hair and tears blurred the horizon. Hours passed before Elias slowed. They stopped near a dry creek, the world finally quiet. The sisters dismounted, falling to the ground, panting, dizzy from freedom's suddenness. Ayana looked at Elias, dust streaking his face, eyes fierce but kind. "Why?" she asked softly. "Why risk yourself for us?" He looked away, fingers tracing the scar on his wrist. "Because once, someone saved me, and I didn't deserve it either." Silence bloomed between them, deep and fragile. Naeli began to hum again, the same melody she'd sung in chains. This time it didn't sound like morning, it sounded like dawn. Elias crouched by the creek, pouring a trickle of water into his palm, offering it to them. "You'll need to rest. There's a cabin not far north. Safe for a while." Ayana studied him, the tired slope of his shoulders, the honesty in his tone. She saw not a savior, but a man trying to balance with ghosts still clinging to him. "You could have left," she whispered. He smiled faintly, a crack of sunlight through storm clouds. I tried. The sisters drank, the water cool as forgiveness. For the first time in days, Ayana felt her chest rise without fear pressing it down. The silence between them turned soft, almost tender. She thought maybe kindness was the last rebellion left in this world. The wind shifted, carrying the faint echo of hoofbeats behind them. Ayana lifted her head, eyes narrowing toward the horizon. Elias heard it too. He rose slowly, his hand finding the gun again. "They won't give up easy," he said. Ayana stood beside him, her voice steady. "Neither will we." The sound grew closer, more riders, more dust. The desert trembled with the promise of another fight. Elias looked at the sisters, saw strength where despair used to live, and for the first time in years, he felt faith. As the sun bled gold across the sand, he whispered, almost to himself, "If this is where it ends, at least it'll mean something." Ayana's gaze stayed fixed on the coming storm. "No," she said quietly. "This is where it begins." The wind rose, sweeping through the valley like a heartbeat. The first rider's shadow appeared against the glare, and time held its breath, waiting to see which truth the dawn would keep.